Right. Good morning. Welcome to Adventures in Cataloging, Authorities and Subject Headings in NC Cardinal. Today, Jessica Efron from the Government and Heritage Library is going to be taking us through this topic. So I'm just going to mute myself and turn it over to her entirely. So Jessica, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. I was saying before, I haven't had a chance to go through this completely because I had a few links that I needed to update over the weekend. But this is a presentation about authorities and subject headings in NC Cardinal in a post-Marchive world. And I had set some goals for the webinar today. We're going to explain what authorities are and how they can help you and patrons searching the catalog. We're going to do some samples of locating and searching authority records in NC Cardinal and in the Library of Congress various web pages. We're going to show you how to read an authority record, identify bibliographic fields in our catalog that can be linked to our authority database. And we're going to go through validating and linking authority records to bib records. And then after the main part of the presentation, for those who have volunteered to work with authorities a little bit more now that we don't have Marchive, I have just a few slides for discussing because we don't really have any expectations for managing authority files, but just to gain familiarity and see what page we're on in terms of familiarity with the MARC format for authority data and going over how to import authority records into NC Cardinal. So this PowerPoint is a little bit fact-filled and newsy. It's dense, but I'm going to make it available to Samantha afterwards so that you guys can access it and maybe follow some of the links and look at some of the screenshots. And as you're working through maybe your first few days of working with authority records in NC Cardinal. By which to say, I mean, I'm not going to read you every single slide, but it has examples if you need a refresher. So authority is a tool used by us, the librarians, to establish uniformity when adding descriptive details to a record. So we want to have one uniform name for people, places, things, subjects, genres, and forms, so that when we're talking about movies and the book is talking about cinema or film and films, we can look up those various terms and all agree to use the common heading motion pictures. And so when searchers in the catalog are searching for movies, films, cinema, motion pictures will combine all of those searches together to one that we've all used. Where authorities come from trained librarians. They go through special training. NACO is the name authority agency in the United States run through the Library of Congress, and SACO is the subject authority organization run through the Library of Congress. And just like we use RDA and used to use AACR2, they use rules to establish a correct term and for any concept that can be authorized. And they do that essentially for us. It's not for the patron and staff. It's kind of more technical than the catalog record is, but it allows you to just search through this one source and determine, in this example, you've got a book by Franklin Roosevelt, but there are at least 3 Franklin Roosevelts, and using information from the source in hand, you can go to the authority files and determine the correct Franklin Roosevelt for your books. And then a third useful thing that authority records do is provide references to related terms like broader terms and narrow terms. And then also if you are searching the authorities under the wrong term, the less popular term, it will just bring you right to the term that we've all agreed on to use. So authority files are very useful for cataloging. And so some of the benefits, like this helps the patrons and staff. Part of our OPAC involves combining like corporate authors and topic subjects into a linkable interface over in the left margin there. And if you're using things consistently, if someone wants to follow this link, there's 35. It's not split up into all the variations. Same with the topic subject. These are, properly formatted, properly spaced subjects that the catalog aggregates for people to explore. And using them, like since law and legislation exists or industrial hygiene exists, you don't have to rack your brain every time you're cataloging something to come up with the proper term. The thing I find most useful is like when I'm doing genre terms, I can never remember which are plural and which are singular. Like LCGFTs tend to be singular, and then sometimes the field form subdivisions are the opposite, and it's very confusing. And this having the authority records prevents unnecessary like looking that up every single time because it's established and you just use that. Um, so the standards for authorities, the rules that these trained librarians use are just to ensure that no two authorized terms are the same within any controlled vocabulary. So the example that I have pasted here is if someone has created an authority record for a very common name, John C. Smith, the actual authorized term, it's the 1XX in the authority record. And that can be a John Smith's would be the 100 because he is a human person. Um, a 150 would be a subject topic. Um, that would be something that we used in a 650 field in a bib record. That 1XX field has to be unique. So if there's already a John Smith here's a good example. If there's already a John Smith who is a captain, the next person who comes across a John Smith that is not this John Smith has to provide something else like a birth date or a death date or a middle initial or something. And so the catalogers who create the authorized terms are doing a lot of research and putting in synonyms and variations in names or terms, and also putting like copious reference notes into the authority files so you can see exactly where they got that information. And Library of Congress does very rigorous authority standards, but at NC Cardinal, we're also authorized to use the Blindex Spanish English translations, Homosaurus, the video game genre vocabulary, and then other ones that we are allowed to use are in the knowledge book. And I've linked the knowledge book later on for us. So just they're standardized and follow very strict rules and have references. And this is what an authority record looks like. This is MARC format for authorities, is like we use MARC 21 for bib records in our bib cataloging. This is MARC for authority records. And the main entry, as I was saying before, is in the 1XX field. So this is Will Oldham, who I always choose because he has both a pseudonym that he plays music under and two bands in his authority record. So you get to see the various relationships that people can have. Another very simple but useful one is a title authority. Here's the New King James Version of the Bible, which when you're cataloging the Bible can be stated in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different languages. But if you have the English version, you will always add this uniform title in a 130 field in your records so that anyone anytime can find whatever version of the Bible you have. Other fields, the three XX fields in authority records are very different from the three XX fields in bib records. They're mostly biographical and personal information. So if you're trying to decide between like a Will Oldham who's written a treatise on law in England and another Will Oldham, like this shows clearly that he's from Louisville. He does folk music and alternative country music. And if that's not enough, down here the 600s hold the notes in notes mostly do with references in authority files. And so the 600s have your notes to where they found this information is referenced in the notes here. And then a main difference in between authority records and bib records is the format just sort of follows the type of record. So humans get a 100, subjects 650 or 150 or 151, depending on what the subject is in the bib record. You can also have a 111, which is a conference subheading or a conference heading. So they mimic what you see in the bib record, but have their own standards. And I do have a link to the standards so that you can search, like, what am I looking at here? Just like you can search Mark. And so if you want to see them in action, this is the web page that got very changed around over the weekend, killing all of my links. But we can do a subject authority search in, well, actually, my first one I was going to do is going to be a name authority heading. And I'm going to do Dr. Seuss, or the new interface lets you do a browse search, a keyword search, or an exact phrase search, which is nice. The old one wasn't so user friendly, but I'm just gonna, I know it's gonna be Seuss Doctor, or at least I think it is Seuss. And I'm gonna search name authority headings. And so the kind of results that you get, if you can see that, is various headings that have used Dr. Seuss. So this, I suspect, is the authority record, but look, we have one here that's maybe in German. And when you click on it, it kind of tells you that it's wrong because it gives you a use for note. So what you have just typed, or what you have just linked is this one in very small print, but the authorized heading here at the top, very prominent, is Seuss Doctor. So this nice interface through Library of Congress lets you search the topic and all of its pseudonyms and linked records. So if I searched Bonnie Prince Billy, which is one of Will Oldham's pseudonyms, it would give me the proper term, Bonnie Prince Billy. And then it would have this 500 cross-reference to real identity, Oldham Will. So this is just for us, the cataloger. And the other one is going to be, I think that title searches can be most confusing for catalogers. So a title search also happens in the name authority because a title is a name for something. And you can see that the heading Bible is not actually linkable. That is not it, I guess. And you scroll through and find all the variations on the Bible that exist. Bible Christians use for, okay. And so this might be a term where you want to play around with it. King James Bible. Nope, this is just getting me publishers. Name authority files for title can be really confusing, and I'm going to go into it more in the local authority search. Okay, so in NC Cardinal, we have local authorities stored. They are mostly the authority records that Marchive used to crawl all of our new records for. And they live in a separate database, much like item records or holdings records live in kind of a separate database from the main bib records. They're not part of the bibliographic record. They are just linked to it. And you know that your record has an authorized term in NC Cardinal linked to it because any field that has been linked has that subfield 0 cardinal followed by the authority ID, which is essentially like the TCN of an authority record. And so if you want to search for art, you want to search the local authority files because it's less confusing than searching the Library of Congress, you'll go to this Manage Authorities link. And let me get my, and that is it. Manage Authorities. And I made it disappear again. Okay. Sorry, getting everything on the same page. So this authorities interface in NC Cardinal is a browse search only. You don't search Dr. Seuss like a keyword search. You search Seuss, comma, doctor, because it is not, unlike the Library of Congress, which you might have to go to in certain situations. The local authorities does not search the pseudonym fields, like it wouldn't have gotten you the German Dr. Seuss, and it doesn't search the 500 field. So if you were searching for Will Oldham, it would not get you Bonnie Prince Billy as one of his pseudonyms. It's not very smart. So you kind of have to know in advance what you're doing. And really, you're going to be coming to this from a bib record. And so your cataloging is already in there. Your bib record is good. So you don't just go wandering around, but it has it also throws errors. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about on this screen. The fact that it throws errors because some of the bigger, I guess the bigger results, like if you searched Smith, comma, John, sometimes, or Smith, comma, that's sometimes too big for the server to really query and you'll get null results. And so if you get no results, you kind of have to narrow it down by entering more words into your browse search. And so we're going to do it. And I have some good demos and some bad demos. So we were going to do a subject search for fisheries. I use this a lot because we have a lot of things about fishes at the state library. Oh, you just hit enter. Okay, so you can see alphabetically not exactly what you would expect because the term that you search is not usually on the first page. It's like the page previous to it. So I'm going to go next, navigating over here, and here we go. So the anatomy of this is that the the results are things that we have in our catalog. And if these things are linked to bib records, that is the obviously named column linked bibs. So here is Fisheries United States, which has 12 bib records linked to it. So if I click on the only clickable thing on this, you can see first in the first tab, the 12 bib records that are linked to it. So if you wanted to change the heading and then make sure that it had updated in all of the bib records, this is where you could see the aggregate of all of those. And then also in this return record, you have the text of the authority record at all in its entirety. So again, you can see it's got an 150 as the main entry. This one, because it's a subdivided one, does not have very many synonyms in it. And if you had to make any changes to this, like if it, like when we updated the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, that required like going in and adding a new field like you would do in a bib record. And the interface is just the same. I prefer flat text, but it is the same interface. It's got the fixed fields, etc. So the other, let's see, Another useful one is when you're doing author searches. I always like to do King Stephen, just because he has so many. And again, it doesn't get you where you expect. You almost always have to go next. And then you can see that we have all of these uniform titles that aren't actually linked to bib records. You could go in and link them at any time. And then we have these 202 that I assume are probably by Stephen King, but do not have the correct authority record. It should be King, comma, Stephen, comma, subfield D, 1947 through. So doing a browse search in the authorities like that can lead you to finding errors in the catalog that you could, make an effort to start updating if you were working on some Stephen King titles. Okay, and then I have an example of just a problem one. So if you do a subject search for something really big like Bible, nope, not author, subject. You get this message, this error retrieving results. And then you get the first one alphabetically, Bible and geology, Bible and homosexuality are the two first alphabetical returns. And then you've got an error. You've got an error. The next one is Bible space plays English. So we're missing everything between Bibles and homosexuality and Bible plays. So we're missing Bible B words through Bible. I saw a question come in, um, but you have to Bible enter more into the search query. And so Bible King gives you Bible films, which was missing from the original search due to error. And maybe Bible stories came next. So I was expecting some King James, but that might be a title search. So to find the missing things, you sometimes have to play around with your search term, keeping in mind that it is a browse search.
And
Question.
um, Jessica, there was a question in chat. Is there any way in Evergreen to bulk update an authority record and have it update in all the linked bib records?
Yes, with a caveat that if there are too many linked records, it's going to stop doing it at some point. So if the topic is like um, cinema and there are 6,000 bib records linked to it, it will fail and you'll have to do it a few different times. But the way that you do that is, I'm not going to save anything, NC Cardinal people, but the way that you do that is just to make the change here and save it. And that will update the links. I don't believe you can do a wildcard search, but I've never tried because more information is not really, or less information is not really helpful in this search interface. It's pretty it's pretty clunky. But we're going to have a playtime in just a minute where you can try a wildcard search. Because I wanted to show you, like any results interface, you can set your columns, and if you all want to go in and set your columns in your manage authority file, you can do some searches of your own and get like results that you can play with. So yeah, I'm taking a little 5-minute break, and does somebody want to keep time? Or somebody can just be like, I'm done in the comments. But get in there, set your columns, and try and do a subject, a topic, a title, and an author search.
I can set a timer.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Because yeah, we'll probably have lots to discuss, especially when you start looking at the author searches. Benjamin, did our first Marchive run go through on 10/6/2019?
10/6/2019. I think it was earlier than that. I think
Oh,
I've seen
okay.
2018 ones. Yeah,
Okay, because just as I looked through the Americas here, they all have the same edit date. Oh, create date was 10/10/18, so they did them
that might have
year,
been it.
year to year. Cool. That's the week I started working here.
Um, it looks like there's a question in the chat. Somebody's
Oh,
search is not working as they expected it to.
okay,
Curtis Jobling or Jeff Smith under author.
okay. So the first thing before I even look, this is only going to show headings that are linked to the authority tables. If you want to search for all instances where Curtis Jobling or Jeff Smith is being used in the catalog, you'll have to do a browse search. And that will get you all of the instances, and you could go in and link any more. So this is exclusively things that have been linked and processed to link to the authorities table. And now I'm going to do an author, Toby. Did I spell it right? Oh, let me see. Sorry, guys, I can't be Cardinal anymore because it doesn't let me see my links. When you search this, you are only searching the library that you are default setting to. So when I do authority work, I log in at the NC Cardinal level so I can see everything and fix everything all at once for everybody. But if you want to just do your own, if you want to just do your own records when you're in here, this is a way to do so.
And 5-minute timer did just go
Oh,
off,
okay,
just to
thank
let you
you.
know. Mhm.
No, I'm still not getting Jobling. Okay, I'm just going to go to Smith.
And Nancy gave a follow-up that Jeff Smith did come up after hitting next page, but didn't
Oh,
come up on the
okay.
initial result page.
They often do come up on the next page because it, for some reason, seems to just like, sort of like in a browse search. If I don't know if you use that very often, but the in the browse search, like the term you're looking for is kind of presented in the middle, and it seems to do that here too. I don't know much about what it is thinking, to be honest. Okay, so here we have our Jeff Smith results. I don't know which Jeff Smith. Oh, okay. None of your searches are bringing anything up. Try spreading your default search library to Cardinal, because it could just be that some of your bib records by these well-known authors just aren't linked yet. Oh, they're all failing with 66. Okay, so Jeff Smith, 1960, February 27th. Okay, so this Jeff Smith has 66 linked bibs, and that's good that it's a named one, because we're going to go to search the catalog, open a new tab. We're going to do a browse search for author Smith, Jeff. What did we say? 19? I was paying attention. 1960? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm searching at the wrong level. I have my results set to 100. It is a little tedious sometimes. Okay, Smith, Jeff, what did we say? 1960, Smith, Jeff. Not even seeing it here. Okay, I don't know why it wasn't coming across in a browse search. So here we have, oh, there's two 1960 Jeff Smiths. So Jeff Smith might need some authority work. I'm sorry, we don't have many fiction books, so I'm not familiar. Cats. No, you're not doing it wrong. The lesson here is that the authorities function in Evergreen software does not work very well. So we just kind of do our best. And it's much easier to do from the linking workflow. And I'm going to show you that next because we're trusting sort of in this system that maybe isn't the best. We're trying to get development on it at the Evergreen level, but it's not great. It's not perfect by any means. So I knew that was going to go badly, but I did not know how badly it was going to go. Um, yes, there are bug reports. Do you have those on hand, Will, so you could share and people could put heat on them? I think we just made one in Authorities Working Group yesterday. Okay. But I mean, the good news, and I wanted to have something cheerful after, like just doing what you can to link bib fields to authority records is the authorities workflow. Like as much as you can do right now, since we don't have Marchive, the service that's like matching things for us, if you can just get things cleaned up so that the system as it develops can match things better, then you're doing your part in keeping everything clean and tidy. Okay, so any new records that you bring in to NC Cardinal, as long as you like check to make sure you're using the authorized terms in the 100, 110, 111, 700, 710, 711, 130, 830, and 655 fields, making sure that those follow like the proper grammar and have the right dates and subfields in them. NC Cardinal will run that in a much more robust matching search than you just did in the interface. Like NC Cardinal will go through and match those to an authority record overnight, that first night that your baby new bib record comes into the system. So as long as you just make sure that you're using the correct Stephen King and the correct Jeff Smith dates and things, it does match it really well that way. It just doesn't behind the scenes when you're perusing them. So that is why you have the Library of Congress links earlier and later, because sometimes it's just easier to search the Library of Congress authorities and just make sure you got the right dates in and stuff. And I'm going to show you now how to. Okay, so when you are doing you've brought in a new record, and I just brought one in today, but I don't know. Okay, so you've brought in a new record. It's brand new today. Let's see, the one that I did today had, I apologize, but it had grain and guano in the title, and that is what I remember. So, okay, and here it is. So this is my new record, and I'm like, oh, okay. Let me go ahead and just delete. I'm just going to delete my form subdivisions. And so I want to make sure that it's going to validate overnight automatically. So I push the validate button in the enhanced mark editor form. Okay. And oh no, it's not really doing that well in the validating. So it knows the catalogs term. It knows the planters, agricultural machinery, and it does not know drills, and it does not know coal manufacturing company. I did search OCLC earlier, and we can search Library of Congress now. So name authority, heading coal manufacturing company. Okay, so this is the proper term. I am using it. And as someone who's volunteered to work with authorities, I can download this record and import it into the database. And I'm not sure how we're going to tackle that for the NC Cardinal community as a whole, but I can find this record, download it as a UTF-8, and then later I can go in and upload it into the database. So, but you don't have to. You just make sure that they're right, because if we get another service like Marchive again, then it's going to do that for us. So as long as they're correct, the patron side of things will still have things indexing and aggregating correctly.
We do have a question in chat about suggestions for authority records for genealogy.
Okay,
I don't know if you have any of those, but if you do.
so we we have at the GHL, the Government and Heritage Library where I work, has like a huge genealogy collection, and we're also technically a NACO librarian, which means we're allowed to create subject headings in OCLC, like Library of Congress subject headings, and we have created local authority records. It was before my time, and I think before we merged into NC Cardinal, but we have a series of genealogy records like for most counties where it's an established heading. Like if you were going to do New Brunswick County, NC, subfield V genealogy, like I think those are mostly established in the local thing. So you can control that at the whole line level. But mostly in the 600 fields, the subjects are going to fail to validate because the system is not smart enough to sort of parse the grammar of the subject heading. So we don't even, like Becky and I, cataloging, we don't even really worry about all of these red false negatives because, eyeballing it, you can tell that it's in the proper grammar. And there are like system-wide settings that you can do in an OPAC to like teach it to ignore like a subfield V, but most systems don't like to do that because I'm not sure why, but it's a big button that you have to push at the NC Cardinal level. And so the subject ones, we mostly ignore as long as they look pretty well. And if they do validate, like exhibition catalogs and Art Modern 21st Century exhibitions, it was probably an authority record created for like database control only by Library of Congress, and bless them for doing that because it helps you figure out the proper grammar of your headings. Did that answer the question? Okay. So this is the whole slide. This is the whole slide about the problem that we have with the validation. Like the subject should always match an authority record from the Library of Congress subject headings, but that is only the subfield A that you need to like. You can look these up in Library of Congress, but however right it is, Cardinal is not necessarily going to match it. It's the same with like you have a perfectly authorized field in a 100, like you have a book about Stephen King, by Stephen King, about Stephen King, but in your 600 field after Stephen King, you have like homes and haunts as a subdivision. That is never going to control or validate or link unless you were to create a 600 with that exact subdivision. And when you think about it, that is just like exponentially impossible. The system just needs to learn to do the grammar. Okay. And so the workflow for the newer records is just tidy everything up and let it link overnight. It really does a very good job of linking proper headings. But if you're in an older record and you notice like you've finished your cataloging and you validated and like you have these terms that have they validate green, but they don't have that subfield 0 with the link, that means they're valid, but they're not linked. And I find this to be a kind of fun part of the of the process. And we will walk through what's my TCN here. Nope, that didn't work. Okay. Sorry, I forwarded one too many. Okay. Okay. So here we have a report of the Secretary of State, blah, 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 blah. So I'm done doing whatever I need to do and I validate and like this one validated and it's linked, yay. But then okay, sorry, they linked overnight, so I'm gonna pretend it didn't happen. Do.
And while you're taking care of those, there was a question in chat.
Okay.
When you talk about cleaning up records as we find them, do you mean anyone or just specific people working on authorities? Can any cataloger do this?
Yes, I mean when you're cataloging your Stephen King book and it doesn't have the correct Stephen King, go ahead and link him. You know, that's if you have uh so you've done working on it and you validated, as long as you feel comfortable with it, um, you can go ahead and oh it's green and it's about the United States Congress Senate. So I'm going to see if there's a link by creating this link here, and it gives you a pop-up, and up at the top it has the term that you are trying to link from. And I don't think that anybody should be using this where you can create a brand new authority record from a bib, because like I would never do that unless I had the actual bib record open in MARC format with a fixed field that I could copy and match. I've got a slide about that later. But you've got United States Congress Senate, ABB subfields. Okay, that's the Senate hearing. So it gives you some possible matches. And like the other search, you kind of have to, United States Congress Senate. You have to scroll around and see, but when you find, okay, that's too much. When you find it, maybe starting with a corporate body wasn't the smartest thing. I apologize. Okay, you've got a 650 term and it is revenue. Not revenue United States, just revenue. You can just poke around. There it is. We've got one that is just revenue. So we're going to click over here to look. And let's see. That's correct, revenue. That's the heading I wanted. So I can go ahead and apply, and that creates that link. So from now on, if the heading revenue is updated, it will change also here. And you would just do that for any of the headings that you felt comfortable with. So, some of them are very complicated. And the bad thing about linking is the series links will happen overnight on a new bib record, but if you ever link a series manually, it will erase the subfield V. And so either don't link them, or before you link them, copy paste the contents of the subfield V so that you can paste them back in after you have linked a series. I find series links to be very convenient for everyone, so this frustrates me, but that's the only way to link a series unless it's its first day of being an NC Cardinal. Okay, and so this is just manually what it was doing is the pop-up is searching your term against the 1XX, the 4XX, and the 5XX fields in the authority record. So it's much smarter than the manage authorities search that we did earlier that failed for most of us. It's searching against all the possible fields, and you can see the ones that it's kind of, this was the North Carolina Division of Archives and History Survey and Planning Branch, and it's providing results for all of the pseudonyms or synonyms for that agency from the fields. So as long as you have the patience to kind of go through them, it does do a pretty good job matching. Okay, so when you bring in a new record, and if you're comfortable with it, or if you're working on an old record and you're comfortable with it, go ahead and validate just to see if you're not comfortable linking, then validate and maybe look and see if there's another form that's better, and just change it in the bib record. You don't have to change it in the authority record. But ultimately, someday, most of these might get linked by someone just doing their normal validation day to day. So just be cognizant of like looking at the various authority fields to find the best match for what your bib record has. Okay, so this is actually the thing that I find most often, because one of our movie vendors apparently is not the best. But an example workflow, you're cataloging a movie or a TV show, and they have 1,700 fields, and like you validate it, and like what that record has for B. Arthur isn't linking, but this is a famous actress, so you're a little suspicious, and you might go into Library of Congress or the local authority files and see, like, why isn't this B. Arthur? Like, maybe it must be typed wrong, because B. Arthur should be linking and linked. And it turns out that that first use with the Beatrice and then B in the parentheses is throwing off the matching that had gone on overnight when these records came in. And so if you just remove that B and try and link, she will be like on the first page of options to link. So that's one workflow that is really easy and low stakes, because movies have a lot, and even if you just do a few on each movie record, it will make it easier to search for patrons. Okay, and then here's another example workflow, and you find authority problems a ton when you're browsing something that is a controllable, authorizable field. So I was browsing the subject Harry Potter, or Potter Harry, and there's a lot of variation, and in authorities, like just and indexing here, just spacing or variations in grammar, like these two, the one with 35 and the first one with 1, the only difference here is someone left out the beginning of the parentheses for fictitious character, which is part of the authority. So if you supplied that, went into that record, supplied it, and linked it, it would then be 36 and 1. And then if you went in and fixed this because it's wrong, by supplying parentheses, it would be all 37 ones with the correct Harry Potter subject heading would be together in one search for you and your patrons. And then also, so that minimally, if you had a few minutes, you could do that. You could add a little stat category to your workflow that's like, fixed authority record or whatever. And then like this was the last search result, the all caps stuff. And I mean, it's probably not your record, but even if you had a few minutes, you could go in and bust one of these up. It's not, it doesn't have anything to do with the authority files, um, but it helps patrons by maintaining, accurate authorized terminology, at least some of it. You could leave part of it in like a 500 note, but just getting the low-hanging fruit out of these crazy records is authority work. That we put it in a stat cat where at my job where that's fixing authorities for NC Cardinal as a whole. And it's just like a little community minded thing you can do, just like you would kind of fix up a bib record that you're using, but it's not necessarily your bib record. Okay. So if you're ever enhancing or updating the authority record itself, you need to be very careful. Um, Marchive used to do this based on a perfect 010 match for Library of Congress, and that's just an authority number that LC subject headings use. So Marchive used to do it based on a perfect like text match and a perfect 010 match. And they would update anybody who died, any significant changes to any of the Library of Congress. And for a time, they were doing the Homosaurus terms. So they were just automatically updating any changes that Library of Congress had made. And it was amazing. But since they're not doing it with like rigorous machine matching, if you are updating an authority record, like because somebody died or because somebody renamed the Gulf of Mexico, you should only do it if you have like a MARC version of the live authority record open in front of you. Be sure the 010 fields match exactly because that's the only import overlay match that NC Cardinal uses for authority files. And then double check all formatting before saving changes because any variations in like indicators, subfields, extra spaces, weird punctuation, it all matters for like the part that Cardinal is doing behind the scenes every night. As you know, computers aren't very smart and it all needs to match just so. And you don't want to introduce errors into it. But sometimes somebody dies and you just need to add a dash 2025 to the record and any of us is qualified to do that so long as we're looking at the same record as is in LOC. Okay, I'm just going down to chain, see if we have any questions. Okay, classification web, love it. Okay, and then creating like original local authority records in NC Cardinal, we don't do that. It's you can create an added entry like a 110 or a 710 or a 610 that is real. We just don't create a local authority record in the authority file for all of the bib fields that we use. Like if if I have a book by an author who it was published in 1920, the author never published a book before, is not going to publish one since because they're dead. I'm not going to create an authority record for this person. It's just locally the best information I have. I make sure I do my due diligence, make sure nobody else has used like some variation on this name, and it doesn't need an authority record. It's too much work. It's not necessary, and it's really likely to introduce errors and duplicated or unnecessary or just weird things to the database. And the authorities database is pretty well curated. And they have really high standards for making original authority records in Library of Congress standards too. So we've done the NACO training here because technically we're supposed to create authority records for state agencies in North Carolina. And it's like a week-long training thing, several hours a day with homework. And I've heard that the SACO one where they make new subject headings is even worse. So we let them be and just try to use all of the great information they've put together for us. And if they haven't done our exact topic or heading that we're using, just try to mimic a similar one in terms of the right subfields to use and using the authority file stuff. So that is the end of the demonstration part. This is just kind of an annotated list of links that you can use, and I'll share this once I make sure all the links are okay with Samantha so that she can put it onto the knowledge book or wherever things like this go. But it is just some resources you might use when you're starting to take more care with your authorized terminology. One that I still find really helpful is this bottom one, the free floating subdivisions. Since NC Cardinal doesn't control for those subfield X's and subfields Z's and things, like peeking into this like reminds me, yes, I can subdivide pretty much anything by like history and then the proper century. So yeah, these are just ones that I put together for you. And this is also just an intermission. If anybody volunteered to work with authorities, can stay a few minutes later. I know we meant to have a little talk at the NC Cardinal, the cataloging interest group last month, but um, if you can stay and talk about it, that would be great. Questions?
If I could just jump in real quick,
Yes, please do.
please.
I pledged that.
Oh, no, you're fine. What I was going to ask or mention with regard to, for example, Nancy's question about local authors, just in case anyone doesn't realize this, even though you don't create an authority record for it, if you enter the information the same way in like the 600 field, say you have multiple books by that same author, as long as you enter their name in exactly the same in the 600 field, all of those records will be linked together by that subject heading. So even though there isn't an authority record, you'll still be able to click on the name and be taken to the other records in the catalog by that author, just in case that might have been a concern of anyone.
Thank you, Will. That is what I was trying to say, but you did it much better.
Oh, okay. And also, we do have planned for the next cataloging interest group to, hopefully, if everyone is able to attend it, to speak about the authorities working group. And Nancy, no, it is not too late to volunteer. We are still kind of trying to put that together. And what we were looking to do with the last cataloging interest group meeting, but we weren't able to because I think only one or two of the volunteers were able to attend, is to try and determine a scope for the group and just yes, as Jessica just emphasized, if you are still interested, please volunteer. Because also going by just some of the other comments in the chat, we have looked into the possibility of another authority record service like Backstage Library Works, but due to just budgetary uncertainty, we've been looking at using the authorities working group as a way of kind of filling in for what Marchive used to do. We still just right now don't quite know what that would fully entail, given the volume of what Marchive did versus what catalogers might be able to do. And I'll hand it back over to you now, Jessica.
Oh, okay. And if anybody has any questions, I put my email on the front slide, and that will be made available to you. But I'm also the NCGov cataloging contact person in that table in the knowledge book, so I'm there too. Okay, and that was just an hour, so this is the stuff. Okay, this is still you, Will, because we don't like I think in my I had like a few slides of settings and things for people who volunteered. Sorry, that's supplied by the. So, but that I guess we're going to talk about it at the next cataloging group, but we don't really know the specifications of what we're going to be working on. So this was just some background information I supplied so that
Right.
everybody's like
We're still
on the
kind of
same
trying
page.
to
Yeah.
figure that out. And like you had mentioned, Jessica, you know, of course, any cataloger who is interested is welcome to, you know, validate or link authority records and things like that. The idea currently with the volunteers with the authorities working group is that kind of like they would be focused on that, and anyone else can do it as they're able or interested.
Okay.
But again, these are things we're still kind of trying to hammer out with the rest of the people in the group. And so, and we also, you know, recommend anyone who's interested to volunteer, but also to, if they can, attend the next cataloging interest group meeting. It hasn't been scheduled yet because I'm still receiving replies to the doodle poll for it. But yeah, anyone who's interested. And once we've kind of nailed it down as to what the group will do, we'll come up about with like specific instructions and put together a knowledge book page with the information and things like that. Because obviously this is going to be very kind of in the weeds with what all it's going to entail.
Okay.
Oh, and Nancy, I can put you down as a volunteer. We actually have a base camp group for it. There hasn't been much activity yet, but I can add you to that, and I can also add anyone else who's interested to it. This might be a question for Benjamin or Samantha, but Joy asks, is there a way to run reports for items that aren't linked to be fixed?
Probably, yes. We'd have to look at what that looks like, what the we can kind of yeah, I'm sure there is, just a matter of how. So we just have to sort of investigate that, get some examples and kind of work backwards from there. But yeah, that's definitely something that we can work on.
Yeah, and I'm envisioning like just a little working group and people can like submit problems to them or I don't know. Like all the people who aren't as comfortable with it, but I don't know. I just I just put together this. If you want to volunteer and you want to just get more familiar with the formatting of the authority files, they're really similar um, to the mark that you use, just completely different also. And there aren't many mandatory fields. I put the link so you can practice downloading MARC files um, from the Library of Congress with its completely new interface as of last weekend. And but it's really easy. And did I put yes, Unicode UTF-8 is the format. And then if you're familiar with Mark Edit, you can download like 100 different authority files and then just use Mark Join to update or import them into a batch. And then this last slide is just the Mark batch import settings that you'll want to use from all the drop downs that you'll want to use for your authority files. And then I always just save my authority files by like the date or something and keep them in for a month or two so I can check up on them. And that was all that I gathered for volunteers. And so I'm done, unless anybody has questions.
I was good. I think Benjamin got Bonnie. I just added Nancy to the working group.
Nice.
I just did a quick poke around in the reporter, and there is definitely a way to run a report on bib records without linked authorities. But I will need to do a lot of work to figure out exactly how to make it work properly, because my first attempt at it seems to have brought up um, in the millions.
which
So
which might actually be accurate.
it might be. I hope not. But yes, I'll need to mess around with it. But there is definitely a way to do it. So
Oh, good. I know that they use it extensively at the King County Public Library. So I don't know if you have any contacts over there, but they do a lot of authority reporting because they've kind of got a DIY system.
okay, I will reach out if I need some help figuring out what's going on here, because um, I'm
Yeah,
definitely
depending on the
not
structure
prepared.
of it, it would basically, I mean, I think part of the question for me would be which fields would be of interest in terms of the 6XX fields, 100 field. And if I understand, it's essentially things that do not have a subfield 0 with a value of cardinal. That is the thing that sort of tells us that there is a linked authority. Is that accurate?
Yes, that tells you there's a linked authority.
Okay, so basically anything that doesn't have that um, would it be specific things with a subfield 2 of a what do you call it? Like LCGFT or whatever it is.
That let me add. I'm typing one in. So 655. Okay. So these are the major ones. It's actually the indicators. So the second indicator would have to be 0 for the name ones. Or wait, let me think. Yes, the indicator would have second indicator would have to be a 0 for these. Oh, I did 710 twice. That's supposed to be 700. Um, I never remember the 130 ones. And then the 655s should have a subfield to LCGFT. Yes.
So all of those would have a second indicator of 0
If
and
if they're Library of Congress, if they're like Canadian or medical subject or medical headings or whatever, they might have a different second subfield and probably won't control and are probably redundant and could be removed.
yeah, so we can with the right information we can ask the right questions and get the things. I think part of the question is like, if it is 6 million subject headings or something, how do we prioritize? How do we do we look at things that have so much stuff on them or that are newer or older, or how do we kind of put the lowest hanging fruit up for people to play?
Yeah. And Mark Edit does have a function where you can check the 650 subfield A only, which, you could just export a million bib records and make sure all the subfield A's are controlling and then just hope for the best in the rest of them. So,
Sports.
I stopped sharing. Are we done? I know I could have gone on for another half hour, but
Unless there are still questions, then I think we can certainly wrap up.
yay.
Well, thank you very much for doing this. I definitely learned a lot.
Oh, sure. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions, guys.
And I will get this recording processed and up on YouTube over probably tomorrow sometime. And then once Jessica has shared her slides, I'll just send those out to the list of everybody who registered.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, then I will get those. I'll get all my little notes off and send them to you.
Perfect.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming and listening to me talk about authorities, a thing that I love.
You are our go-to authority on authorities.